everybody. First, thank y'all for just having me here, for coming to listen to some poems. But thank you so much to Jameka for inviting me and being a part of this, and for Diamond for being a part of this. Y'all like in for a treat. American Sex Tape is amazing. Mother Body is amazing. So just buy that off rip. I'm not gonna take too much of your time because I want to hear them. So what I'm going to do, of course, is just read some poems I've been working on about being a child and, mothering your mother, and also mothering your baby who is your work, but you're not sure if that's a good thing or not. It's iffy, it's tricky. So I'm going to read like a couple of short poems about that, and then I'll read one longer poem, and I'm out your way. We're moving on up. Okay. So something you should know about this particular poem is that my middle name is Infinity, but it's spelled like infinite. So it's the E at the end instead of the Y. And my last name is Allen. So growing up in school, of course, I'm the first person on the roll. And the teachers always like, Kendra, Infinite. They always like, Infinite? Allen? And I'm like, it's Infinity. And of course, that make kids laugh because they're thinking of Toy Story. And I was watching Toy Story, and Buzz Lightyear told Woody, you're not a collector's item. You're a child's plaything. For somebody like me, it just made me reevaluate my entire existence. I was like, dang. So I wrote a poem about that. And it's called, I Tell My Teachers, I Know How It Looks, but this is how it's pronounced. Then the entire class laughs at who I am. There was a time I felt benign. Then situations happened because of my mouth. Had I kept it on safety, I would have died. I was agreeable then, and nothing was livable. I was told it was arrogant to think of myself as infinite, but I understood so much and pitied my mother. When I tried to bury this, bloodlines called from my bowels. I had to burn them, had to turn that long vow into a war, branded it with my middle initial. I knew I wasn't a toy or a catchphrase or capital, because if I ever turned into an adversary, all that means is I meant to. All right, one poem out the way. Moving on. Okay, so this next poem I'm going to read is called My Mother Asked, How Do I Feel Harmony When I Never Kissed a Man? Keep in mind, my mama asked me this when I was like 13. I'm like, what are we talking about? But okay. Okay. Concerningly, she believes in my purity. I unbraid her hair. By 16, I've been kissed by plenty. I try not to rewind it. Infidelity shouldn't be a child's business. The only thing it informs me of is I've shaped some friction. Yet I tell her, I don't know. In regard to her analogy, it's the way things get said. I guess I'm easily swayed by words. I never lie about my actions, just impact. Not the fish I caught, but how I indulged in the kill. Suppressing the craving felt criminal, but the benefits were never beautiful. I wanted tenderness, but I didn't know how to rest. All right. Another poem about me being in second grade and losing the spelling bee. And writers, we all lost the spelling bee. I realize that's a universal experience. Yeah, like we all lost. And we remember the word that we lost to, and we will never forget it again. My word was beautiful. I mixed up the E and the A. It was just too much. Oh my God, I'm hurt thinking about it. But I wrote a poem about that, and it's called I Lost the Second Grade Spelling Bee Because I Couldn't Spell Beautiful, or because I refused beauty. Obviously, there's merit in my mistreatment of language. In it, pollen. Anything I've ever said, I break the line. I take it back. Do you remember a time? No, I sought flight. Curvature ain't involved in my type of nonsense. I faked it, wonder. And really, I ain't worthy. I took back the winnings, too tired of being the evidence, the way it insists upon itself. That's all my Family Guy followers. It insists upon itself. Okay, it insists upon a backside growing. I told everybody I love it. Then the signal faded. The project was minuscule. Always had been, about nothing except control. So the last poem I'm gonna read for y'all is, I don't know, I'm kind of scared to read it, but it's probably like one of the most truest poems I've ever written. And like I said earlier, I'm really like in this space of like, bro, are you really gonna make your work your baby and be a workaholic? Because that's gonna lead to all this other stuff that you can't control and substances and all this, because that's not how this goes. But capitalism. Okay, anyways. This poem is called Yearn, Baby, Yearn. It's only a blessing because I begged for it. Bowed both wrists into this reassurance, requested it, even snatched it wide, filled it with wind and peripheral vision. I was called and still supplemented it, this imagination. I think I'm prettiest now, on par with a palm, brandishing this back. This poem ain't about sex. I'm mistaken. They never are. They never were. That part of me I made up. I promise I'm not seductive enough to keep secret. I ain't never got over nothing. I don't want to. Really, it's been vicious. I've been enhanced by all I've hoarded. It can't be art if you believe it's all intentional. It's not. I never claimed it to be. I never claimed to be anything. And it's been a lifelong issue. How my words have felt connection. It was called erotic. I'm often egregious and petrified of combustion, looking for elements to alleviate the lure of awe. I can't keep dismissing this desire. In it, there's a tangible, terrible act. I prefer to be talked through it, or I'll vacate. Two hands on the hand. I can't read, y'all. I can read, I'm sorry. Two hands on the head. I tend to strain the palpability of the brain, how it sprinkles its contents, and we catch it. Because where would I be without this audacity to shrink? I make it so hard when I beg for it, the ability to materialize. I saw the way it stood, all shifty. Was it the way I said nothing, then sucked my teeth? Once they maimed me, my name, a wayward girl, a layman's term, a drinking gourd, but that was all in the past when I pleaded. Thank y'all. Can't wait to hear these amazing poets after. Okay, bye, I'm out. Thank you.
All right, hello. Hello to everybody out there on the other side of the internet. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Kendra, that was amazing. That last poem hit some teeth behind it, right? And it was a marvelous bite. Thank you so much for sharing that poem. Jameka, thank you so much for allowing us to celebrate you and your work and your phenomenal book today. It is such an honor to be in this space with you. Thank you so much for that. Shout out to Malaprops for creating spaces where we can talk about desire, we can talk about threat, we can talk about resistance, and we can talk about how restaurant was the word that I misspelled at the spelling bee. I will never forget that. So because today is a joyous occasion, I decided to read the odes in the book, right? Odes being songs of praise. And in particular, I think the odes in this book are songs of praise in difficult moments. I know that releasing your first book is a wondrous time. It's also a time of adjustment, right? But that thread of joy that kind of constantly pulls us through, I want to kind of celebrate and acknowledge that today. So I'm going to be reading 3 odes from the book, Mother Body, right? And this first ode is the first poem of the book. It's Blood Ode. Fat girl nicks herself shaving in the shower, resents the water that will carry her blood to sea. Blood, worthless currency, cannot buy a country but becomes it, plate with stitching into streets. Fat girl weeps for the blood that won't return. How many mothers have tried such a homecoming? Sons and daughters inking the tarry streets. Fat girl becomes a mother through her looking, has seen too many children mangled by a sense of justice. She carries somebody's child in the crater their deaths create inside her. If she could just reach deep enough, if she could piecemeal her own plump, how many layers would it take to make a bulletproof lung? Fat girl mourns the blood muling a persistent path through the drain pipes. If blood must be taken, let there be coral glittering like gemstones at their feet, dolphins pitching foam in arcs out from the sea. Let there be air enough. Fat girl could be a mother, fretting the impossible journey of her blood. So this next one is in conversation with Little Kim, right? And in particular, Little Kim's magic stick, right? And this felt like the one night to kind of start talking Little Kim a little bit. But in particular, I want to kind of think about the kind of magic that we often force Black women to kind of create and to create with their bodies, right? Denying possibilities to access. Right. And so I want to go ahead and read this poem for tonight. This feels like a good night to read that. It's Ode to Magic. Little Kim says, when it comes to sex, don't test my skills. Because my head game have you head over heels, give a nigga the chills, have him pay my bills. Magic stick, do yourself a favor, listen to it tonight. Praise for the anthem that raised me from makeshift mattress lumped together by throw pillows, basement hookup anthem, anthem of block parties posted up in a Black and Milds hold, anthem to remind me there's value to my hips in motion, my ass in motion, buoys on the mist in any dewy eye. And that summer, mama handed me hand-me-down Jordache jeans. And I wore them to sit my denim ass in the bowl of the neighbor boy's crotch. What did I own then but the silver hook of desire reeling me in? Teens gathered on the transformers till dark, despite the heat, despite nothing between us but the angling need to be seen as someone not cramped 6 to a 1-room apartment, mama sleeping each night beside a man she didn't love. That summer, the neighbor boy plucked irises from the sign outside our complex for a chance to rest his hand on the copper pennies of my brown, growing breasts. I learned then all the trinkets a body could conjure. private jets, Tiffany silverware sets, a palette, and a place to call home. This is my last poem. Thank you so much for joining me, for listening. Kendra, thank you again for your beautiful language. Jameka, I'm just so thrilled, so excited, so happy, so joyous. What a wonderful, joyous moment to be a part of, right? And I just want to be your backup singer today. So let's get Beyonce on the stage. Ready? This is Ode to My Neighbors. This is for everybody who's had thin apartment walls. Ready? Ode to my neighbors. You've been a single step in the morning's wine blue, mechanical howl from a faucet, sizzle of iron skillet and heat-hungry pans. The first time I heard your muffled grunts through the walls, my chest thumped its warren of rabbits, my fingers gripped the bed's bare edge, then your moan, like silk pulled from the magician's throat, wrapped its gauzy fingers around my leaping lungs to remind me humans make love sounds too. So, this, the first of many lessons you taught me, the second that I am too fond of illusions of being alone, that I've taken for granted the unbroken boundary of these sweet cream walls, assumed that a foot of asbestos and drywall might swallow every clamor and come. When I've realized you were having sex, I fumbled for my cell phone, searched for songs to drown your lust rattles clacking my walls, then stopped. Remembered my own bold cries shored up in silence, arguments with my partner, late night movie jags until the screen glowed with the spun gold sun, or the time I threw up a shrimp wrap. The tail hooked my throat's soft meat until I barked a strangled seal. You bore those sounds with saintly patience. And you're the only neighbors to never use your blinds. Many nights on the way to the dumpster or the car, I've glanced up at the light warmed in your rooms, revered your headboard, your golden lamp, slender view of your love-blued neck sauntered from room to room. I've cried in need of love before. The night after the night in blazing Charlottesville, 2 days of hateful faces on my feed, voices licked from the newsreel, a vengeful flame. I was afraid, but out of toilet paper. So I drove to Walmart, haunted by figments of hands on a torch's neck. I've cried before I ever left the lot. I would have welcomed any display of love then, would have lined up in the produce aisle to watch you bear back on the bananas, doggy on the dates. I would have cradled your love cries like a newborn, would have nursed its miracle. Show me, sweet neighbors, what it means to love loud enough for everyone. Cup the chalice of your hips, vine that, ooh, baby, praise across the grapes again. The produce displays sway in church choir harmony, pious plums, tomatoes unbridled and blushing, kiwis who turn their one emerald eye and witness their seeds, twinkling hallelujahs, jade. Thank you.
Oh my God. Yes. Oh my gosh. I am absolutely thrilled and so humbled to have both Kendra and Diamond. One thing behind the scenes is like, as a debut author, they kind of ask you, like, what, who do you want to read with? I didn't realize I had that much power. And so when I reached out to Diamond and Kendra and they said yes enthusiastically, it was kind of like my heart just swelled because they bring the energy that I really, really need to get into this book, American Sex Tape. I have my little advanced reader's copy all marked up. And with that, talking about desire and love in your body, I kind of need to jump into this book saying that, like, I think people kind of mistake the title as something that's supposed to be salacious and pornographic, and we're gonna get real, we're gonna get in there. And because so much of the impetus of this book started with Kim Kardashian, people kind of want to assume that she's the spotlight, but I'm really using her as a gateway into my own questions about womanhood and sexuality and what that means in American culture. And also the word I went out on in the spelling bee was jubilee. I've never used that word again in my entire life, so I'm mad about it. But we'll get started. And I'll start with the first poem in this book, which I've kind of called the thesis statement of the book. And it's called American Sex Cento. A cento being sort of an ancient Greek form of basically the poet steals lines and words, quotes from other poets to form a new piece. It meant a lot to me to try to experiment in that form of what have, the poets before me, Lucille Clifton or Walt Whitman, what have they said about America and what have they said about sex and romance, and sort of that shaped the kind of thesis of this book. And especially experiencing America as a Black woman is a lot like experiencing an abusive, romantic, tumultuous love affair. And so this first poem, American Sex Cento. I hear America singing, "You are the one." I am lit for the whole boatload of sensitive bullshit. An artfully placed penis swung from the end of a rope like a flag. Mossy and thumping, bare of logic, red. I love you, flesh into blossom, empty eagle, devouring all in haste, destroyer, builder. I'm totally into strapping on the belt of dynamite and helpless, trembling bondage, the free. Who said the free? Not me. I never understood desire until I felt your hands around my throat. You may stand upon me, but do not hide your face. Can't find what you can't see, can you? America, the beautiful night is about to blow up. When the apocalypse comes, so will we. It's sort of mentioned earlier, and we're gonna dig into this, that Kim Kardashian kind of was the main start of this book way back in 2016. And I kind of got obsessed with her. she was just in the news so much, and she raised so many questions about sort of what is cultural appropriation and what is the Black female body on a non-Black woman's body. What does that mean? But I found it fun to just like make fun of her and sort of play with the satire of American pop culture and our beauty ideals and those kind of things. And so this next poem, find it. This next poem is written in a kind of fictionalized voice of Kim Kardashian. I like to tell people that I was writing the poems that are Kim Kardashian persona poems. I was writing them as if Kim woke up one day, lost her mind, and became like class conscious, and all of a sudden decided to start questioning everything about her identity. And so this is one of those poems. It's called "There's a Lot of Baggage That Comes With Us, but it's like Louis Vuitton baggage. You always want it. I pray for my maids. Their gods have more debt than my God. My God has more favor, more sex appeal. Do not misunderstand. I take time for myself, burning my silk sheets one thread at a time. I call the president and I ask if money corrupts. Absolutely. I chew TV noise and eat expensive corpses. There's a particular way in which men are hypnotized. Click me, press your hard thumb to my lips or décolletage, and you think you've burned a cross into my forehead. You think my various holograms are possessed, fucking the camera's brains loose. But honestly, my spare time is spent focusing my energies on not disappearing. I count the pixels of my breast. I tolerate my reflection. I sweat the calories from my heart. I buy my corset and coffin wholesale. I give shit away. I let my husband serenade my vagina. I sing lullabies to my children long after they faded. I edit the martyrdom. I remove the cameras from my home. I invite cameras back inside. I leak to the lenses. I thrive. That's like one of like the earlier poems in this book. I'm surprised it made it. Like Diamond and Kendra, you both know there's a lot of editing that goes into this thing. The things you wrote years ago might not make it to the end. I think into that kind of question of what I've been thinking about a lot, sort of in interviews and blog posts about Kim Kardashian, especially because this book was my thesis for my MFA. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you're writing about Kim Kardashian. You should send it to her, And I'm like, one, why would she want to read this? But two, it's not for her. This book, I always imagine it for Black women, them first. And so I was always kind of a little bit insulted when like friends or classmates, workshopping, they're being kind, saying like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, send it to Kim Kardashian. But I was like, she's not the reason we're here. And so there's a pivot in the book where sort of leaving that satirical space of, let's look at this woman who has benefited so much from the I would say the backbreaking beauty labor of Black women and antagonism against Black women in America. Let's shift and start focusing on sort of my experiences as a Black woman with, what is beauty and what is desire and what are my wants and how that relates to the American capitalist project. And so there's a poem in here that I think kind of has one foot in those kind of Kim Kardashian mindset, but is now stepping into the more personal aspects of this book. It's called New Black Venus. When a Black woman starves, she eats the fat of my ass, dips her cornbread in the oil pressed from my pores. My table stays set for famine. Well-nourished in body, my nipples point north to a vigilant God from which the manna rains. She asks why some women are born last and so far from God. I say my truths come dream. LA wasn't built in a day, but on a waxed $1 million vagina. Mouths claim they never had a blank girl like me, and I let my glitter splatter their beards. White girls say when I go blonde, I'm like a whole other ethnicity, so exotic, like some pets and dancers. I forget that Black women have happened to me, and men and sex have happened to them, but sister says more of that. My skin, the new Black, my Venus, a Persian rug on collection, dreams gestate and die between my lips, center of the universe, toll the bell, who wants to dine first? I believe I'm moving through these poems as fast. Maybe I should slow down. There's a series of poems and sort of a internal series of poems in this book. Their titles sort of start with Black or, and I'm trying to have sort of a conversation about sort of the multi-identity of sort of reckoning with what is Blackness and what is Black memory, especially Black memory that lives in the body or the female body. And so one of these poems was sort of inspired by just memories of being a child at my grandmother's house. And I feel like for a lot of Black women, this thought is just kind of coming to my mind now. For a lot of Black women, that's kind of the first sanctuary of Black womanhood, is when you go into your grandma's room and you start going through her perfumes and her photographs. And so that kind of memory inspired this particular poem, which I haven't read live a lot. And I probably should rethink it, because I feel a very sensitive spot for it. It's called Black, or I Sit on My Front Porch in the Projects Waiting on God. And when she arrived, she did not disappoint. Her low hanging breast, the nipples puffy and downturned, the smile of gapped teeth fed with coconut oil and a side of fried okra. She petted my woolly head, ran her swollen knuckles down my bitter spine and recoiled, cursed the weight of my sorrow with hymns. Why is there no milk or honey in you, child? God asked, and I said, I burn, I cry, what's new? God scoffed. How many wars did Helen fuel with her labia, her will? She answered exactly the number she needed to win men to their deaths. I interrogated, does God have a pussy where her soul should be? I kept it in a vanity box, she said, with my menopause and my pocket change and my wit. Then suddenly I remembered being a girl of 10 climbing the stairs of my grandmother's house on Potter Street. In her bedroom, I cracked the spine of her jewelry box studded with broken sequins like baby's teeth. I clasped her pearl earrings, her needles, threads, her shards of glass in between my hands for supplication, declaring that I hold a woman like a man should. Then God placed my hands on her face, and I thumbed the wrinkles across her eyebrows and down her cheeks, and she said that was woman. And then I rubbed the pouch in which her children drowned, and she said that was woman also. And she unveiled a torn hymen, a full beard, the collapse of the old gods of sex, and declared that this can be woman too. And she placed a hand inside the hole where my heart should be and said, I was woman too. And who says God is cruel and without color? This next poem, the title comes from a Derek Austin poem that I really love. And I think by the time I was finishing this book, my mind was fixated on, I think a lot of people, I was finishing this book around like 2020. I think a lot of people were kind of fixated on sort of the capitalist exploitation and what that means for our identities. And so, what does that mean for survival as well? So this next poem is called, Now That I've Survived, When Does Living Begin? To my knowledge, I have not slept with someone's husband. Ass like a tailored lawn in Kenilworth, a straight A student, intellect like another trillion plus to the debt ceiling. Due to my mythic endurance, one can liken me to an onyx marble slab central to a tax-funded memorial garden, waxed over with smears and gnawed gum. My eyes stoned into eternal reverence for this haunted earth. It is never enough to cup my screams in my hands. The neighbor's toddler always startles, bolts into peals of his own hunger. It is never enough. I deserve to inherit more than wind, more than Budweiser farts rolling over the amber waves. What I'm saying is, it's time to buy a gun and yoga in order to restore balance to my life. I'm rubbing every amethyst in this white lady's crystal store, all her good chakras and good sense depleted in a sneer. With certainty, I am unable to claim that I exist or if I am a shade in the corner of someone's racial imagination. Every master closes his eyes to dream of me, and blankets of snowy static just fall forever. I thought I should have died. Miserable miracle. Benediction, enough good earth left to pull up over my shoulders, steal this leftover clay and mold a future with which I can indict the American empire on my mother's name. There's a 1-bedroom cottage downtown for me, a toy dog leaping from my basket of sumo oranges, pissing on a suede Ugg boot by the door. And I'm smiling at a cum stain on 1,000 thread count bed sheets. Student debt is vacuuming my rugs. Over the blare of Stevie Wonder's horns, white men buried under my house yelp, bending the kitchen tiles with their erections. I am a good girl, the spiked pin on a blue ribbon. This next poem is called The New American Girl Doll is No Longer a Slave. The gates are flung. I dog the bones, worming gardens for sour fruits to drink, sticky stimulants in the new throes, busting rocks with my teeth, my throat growing longer, a crane I bleat. My flower has changed her veins. Arteries of a map, the only out is through the trap, the mouth, the navel. Sons of the Union, having made me post-existence, anything can become me. I am hives blooming red across your chest, a memory, a shock of spring sympathies iced over, half monster from the train tracks, slicking her fleas, slut, skank, sphinx, Medusa, Madonna, Mammy. With the right conditioning, you believe I can show you who you are in a more perfect union. Had you just known, remained cautious, you would have smelled me coming. I cradle your acute skull, slip my knife between rib and breath, the horror of my perfection. I guide you. I devil dance, 2 caked feet, little myths, prophecies from a tapping tongue. Now I get it. I understand what liberty had always known. I'm post-colonial, sentenced to casually die, for I am forgiven. I'm gonna wrap up with the last poem in the book. One of the earlier poems, and it's actually like my favorite because sometimes, and I'm sure other writers can can speak to this, is you kind of write a poem just for yourself. And I was interested in writing myself a mantra to get out of this dark space that was happening around the time that I moved from Philadelphia to Chicago. And I needed this mantra to start with sort of a role model and then launch into, hey, this is a praise of how you survived. This book talks so much about sort of the ways that we are convinced by money and culture that we're not enough. Your survival is enough is sort of what this book is saying. And so this last poem, and then we'll open it up to the three of us to talk more. This last poem is called Since I Laid My Burden Down. Since I laid my burden down, I eat like I got Beyonce shit to conquer. I grow my eyebrows furiously. I look at fucking and my genitals are not too cold or too hot. I feel as if I belong to myself and I deserve sweatpants. I dream longer now since I've set it down. Dreamed Christ blew a bunch of Black girls goodbye kisses. I clenched his farewells in my little fist. I practiced repression, folding to my knees in the afternoons, serving an invisible crotch, one day called to serve at a man's zipper and he won't know my name or eyes. My God, unwind your ideologies from around your ovaries. You will not be buried twice. Be both thirsty and the flood. My swollen cloud cells pissed rain for days. Whoever drowned was collateral. I don't set names to anyone or anything anymore. I just roll back into the sea instead of my usual rage, uncaught in dreaming. Just want to be Taylor Swift tomorrow. There'll be money, won't there be? Thank you all. Let's open it up.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. Thank you.
Wow. I mean, what more needs to even be said? Wow.
Dang. Whoever drowned was collateral. It do seem like
Just set it off. All right. Okay. That's fine.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin other than to thank you both again for joining me. It was such a pleasure to read after both of your beautiful words. I don't know. Any questions for me?
I have a question, but I also want to take a moment to kind of encourage anybody who's watching to drop a question in the chat. Feel free to either send that by email or in the comments. But in the meantime, I guess I'm curious about how you're processing the first book now that the book is into the world, right? We were talking about this earlier and talking about like the kind of complicated feelings that come into that. But I think there are a lot of folks who are listening who would also like to know and understand what that first book process is like. So do you want to speak on that a little bit?
Yes, it's funny because I had this strange like moment of reckoning last year after University of Wisconsin Press announced that the book had won their Brittingham Prize. And I was speaking to a former professor at Northwestern, and she said I was talking to her and I was like, how do y'all do it? How do y'all handle books? And she stopped me and she was like, why do you keep saying y'all? You're published now. And so it kind of hit me of like, oh man, I've now joined a new world. And a part of that world is like, it's not your baby anymore. I've been sitting with this book since 2016 and writing it over the course of an MFA, and it's always your possession and you go back to it and you kind of haunt the pages looking for inspiration. And then now it's like, oh, now there's an audience, and sort of now here's the real test of your intentions and your craft. It's been amazing. It's been a little scary, really. Scary because I think I'm always kind of caught off guard by how people might respond to just the mood or the energy or the satire or the kind of like smart assness of the book. It's kind of, this was a compliment, but a professor told me once, was like, this is not pretty. This is kind of like messy kind of poetry. And then now it's kind of hitting me. It's like, yeah, that messiness is going to be shared, and how will people respond? I mean, oh my word, it's been kind of crazy. It's been a whirlwind of having, something that really was kind of like your baby for so long out in the world, graduated.
That's a good word, like graduated. I guess my question to both of y'all is something that I found so powerful about like y'all work is the way that y'all speak about your work, which is something that I struggle with. And I guess I just wanted to ask, like, how did you gain that confidence to be able to be like, this is what this poem is about? Because Jameka, you said somebody was like telling you, give it to Kim Kardashian. They were saying it in kindness. You're like, these poems are devastating. Like, why would I? It's not about her.
Right.
Like, and so like building that confidence to be able to speak about what a particular poem is about, let alone a whole entire body of work. I struggle with that still. I'll be like, I don't know what I just did. I can't really tell you what it's about. It's out. It's just above energy. Me. It's right. Above me now. It's just there. But how did you build that language and like that confidence to be able to be like, I know what you took from it, but like this is what I'm doing. So like think about it that way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I started with that in the sense of one, I think one part of it was there was a constant need to defend the project. And I think over the years, I've just gotten better to speaking to people about what I'm trying to do. And that defending came from the workshop experience of an MFA. I mean, I was like the only Black person in that. So I'm also defending a project that I had no real kind of sense of like a white audience understanding, other than the kind of gateway into, like, most everybody knows Kim Kardashian regardless of your race, right? And so there was a lot of practice just defending my intentions, sometimes with specific poems, sometimes with the project as a whole. I sort of recently kind of spoke to a little bit of that in a blog post I wrote for Northwestern's MFA blog that they keep, and they ask, you know, alumni to come back and kind of write for it. And the amazing legendary Ed Roberson, who's an amazing poet, he was one of my professors, my workshop professors, early in at the very kind of like when this project was really young. And he outright asked me, like, who cares? Like, who cares about Kim Kardashian? Why would this be your focus? You know what I mean? And that was really actually a challenge to be like, make her matter. Like, she is, like, people are going to be like, why did you write about Kim Kardashian? And then you have to write the stuff that makes them realize, oh, it's not about her at all. And you also have to kind of defend that. The second part of that is just now with promoting the book and doing interviews and just, you know, going to different readings and out, you know, sort of live shows and doing like virtual things, people ask a lot of questions. And I think I'm still sort of formulating some of those defenses, or like trying to ask about what this poem means, or why did you write it this way? It's kind of funny, like I kind of mentioned earlier, like I went home, you know, and my family, I come from like working class Philadelphia roots. You know, nobody really reads poetry. They think it's kind of like, how'd you get into poetry? That's like, when they think of poetry, they think of like Maya Angelou, and that's about it. Maya Angelou is it though, but just to say that. But
Niggas.
you know, like I went right. I went back, and you know, they like, you know, my family's so supportive, and they're buying the book. They were like, we don't know what you talk about, but we love it. But can you explain this and that? And so that's kind of part of it. I think there was like only a point in time writing the book where I got like frustrated trying to explain what I'm doing, because that also feels like, oh, that's an issue on my part. Like my craft isn't strong enough if people don't get it, right? But sometimes that's not always it. And sometimes that is absolutely it. Like I just need to go back and rework the poem because what I'm trying to say isn't coming across right. But sometimes that's also just like being in a classroom where most of the class are like, you know, white, middle class, upper class people who might not kind of understand sort of some of the inspirations, like, you know, Diamond opening with the Little Kim. I was listening to Little Kim and trying to get into a mode of like, how would a female rapper say this line? How do I write that? Or, you know, I was reading, and a lot of my like inspirations aren't so obvious to the sort of so-called audience for poetry. And so that was kind of the evolution of learning how to like just talk about what I'm trying to write. Sometimes I trip over my words, but I try to always have an answer in some way.
I agree like 1000% with Jameka. I think that some of the best strategies for learning how to present my poems has been through an engagement with either academic audiences who are going to be hypercritical of you writing about your Black ass body in the first place, right? Or two, right, practicing trying to translate my work, right? I think there's so many ways in which, especially in like an MFA or a PhD, you're taught to approach poetry in academic senses and academic terms, right? And at the real, like, that's not what I want to do. I don't want to write like poetry of the academic kind of sense and sensibility, right? I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in reading folks like me. So I think the biggest help has been trying to translate what I'm doing into poems to my mama, right?
Yeah.
I find that folks who don't care about poetry are the best readers of my poetry,
Mhm.
right? Because they're gonna keep it real with me. And
Right.
having somebody in your corner, like Jameka, you're talking about Ed, right? Having somebody in your corner to ask why, right? Is so
Right.
helpful. Because sometimes I'm like all up in here and I'm gesticulating. I'm like, oh my God, this is the best idea. And you're trying to write it out. And then I'll have my partner who like does not give a fuck about poetry, does not care about poetry. And they'll
Mhm.
read the piece and sit there and ask me, so why are you doing it this way?
Yeah.
Are you doing this? And I have to like explain that. And if that logic is not stacking up, if it's not making sense anywhere outside of the poetic page, right, then I'm probably not approaching that poetry the way I need to do, right? And so like practicing that, having that dash down, practicing answering my why, engaging with that why
Mhm.
over and over again, right, has really kind of helped me figure out how to explain the poems. And also, last thing I'll say, and then we can kind of go forward, is I've just learned to be really malleable with my
Mhm.
description, right? Like I don't actually fully understand my poems even after they're in the book, you know?
Yeah.
That the more that I have conversations about these poems and what I was trying to accomplish, the more that I realize about the poems and what they are trying to do, right? And it's just a big part of it is kind of like learning that my answer, my explanation for what the poem is can change, right?
Yeah.
And that it will change, and that's okay. So we've got like what, 3 minutes left. If anybody has some
Okay.
pressing questions, we can answer said pressing questions. If not, right, just a kind of nice general kind of, I think, question to close out with for anybody who might be interested in a book, right? Just a quick send off. If you had to give somebody one word of advice, right, for being a writer, just any one thing, what would you give?
Oh my goodness. I love this question.
Don't think too hard. Keep it simple. Keep it simple.
Oh,
Write weirder. Like seriously, the stuff that you think is too weird or too like that's too in their face, leave it there and sleep on it. You might come back to it in a craft way and try to fix it. But once I sort of let go of like the shame of writing what I wanted to write about, like and being like straightforward about it, your work gets so much better. So just write weirder stuff.
Oh my God.
Seriously.
We have
Yeah.
similar advice. Mine was gonna be like,
same.
save the shame for the editing process, right?
Yeah.
I've been having to learn, like, you don't have to combat shame, you don't have to turn it off. Just tell it can come in later, right? So
Mhm.
write the thing as you need to write it, and then you can let shame be all sneaky when you go to edit.
Yes.
Right.
I love how Diamond said one word and we're all finna say like a paragraph. My advice would be kind of similar to Jameka's of like genre does not exist, but rhythm does. And if your rhythm is right, you can convince some people of some stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, that's an amazing way to end. I'll go ahead and say Diamond's here in Asheville. Right weirder is such an Asheville thing to say. I mean, it's a thing to say a lot of places, but like it really resonates, I think, for the hometown folks here. So this has been amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Been great to share space with you all this evening and to hear your work and sharing your energy, your energies. So I will just invite the three of you to share any final words you have before we say thank you and good night to the folks who have been joining us. And why don't we go in the same order we started and end with Jameka. So Kendra, you first.
I'm just thankful to be here. So thankful anytime I can hear writers who I love read work that I've read and like envision them reciting out loud, and to hear where they pause and to hear where they speed up. So yeah, I'm just grateful to be here, and feeling inspired to work once I exit this Zoom.
I'm also going to just extend a word of gratitude to say thank you so much again, Jameka, for trusting us to hold this space with you. A first book is a beautiful and momentous occasion, and you only get one, ideally, right? And so it's really kind of special to be able to hold this space with you. It's a really big honor. And also, just if you want more books like Jameka's, please support, right? Go ahead and grab that book, support, buy through Malaprops, right? Support our local bookstore. These things mean a lot. So gratitude and also a reminder for support.
Oh my gosh, I'm so deeply thankful for Malaprops, for University of Wisconsin Press, and for Kendra and Diamond joining me to encounter you two on this crazy journey of this first book is just an amazing blessing, because now I feel like, okay, now my book is in conversation with the giants, the women whose work I truly love. So thank you, Diamond and Kendra. And to second Diamond's, please go and support your independent bookstores. I'm here in Chicago where there's lots of independent bookstores. We don't fool with Barnes and Noble like that. So please, and especially support your poets and support all their books. I mean, poets are writing in every genre. And so Kendra has Fruit Punch, which is an amazing memoir. Mother Body is a collection I hold dear to my heart from Diamond. And so share these works and support. And so thank you all.
And thank you all again. And thanks to everyone who's been with us. We appreciate you, and stay safe and well till we see you again in whatever fashion we see you again. Good night, everybody.